Next up, we have our last panel of the day. We are exploring the fact that cloud technologies are changing the way that we work. There's no way to say, I couldn't get on the server these days. But yes, to explore intelligent cloud in a connected world, please welcome to the stage some behemoths in the front end and back end of cloud technologies, with a panel chaired by moderator Lionel Lim of Pivotal. Thank you very much.
So we're supposed to go by
Do we start? Do we start? Okay. Welcome to the last segment of the panel. You have heard the last panel talk about the experiences of the connected world to the way people live, the changing, how smart nations are coming together. But on this segment, we are going to explore the tips of how to. Because the world coming together, the connectedness, they call it the global village, that's definitely happening, right? It is just different speeds at different countries because the bandwidth is not equal. So we see a lot of small, medium enterprises, a lot of startups. They are changing the game by bringing the innovation onto the network, onto the cloud. So what are they doing in terms of innovating on the cloud? And what they are doing is creating a lot of pressure on the large corporations in which they are disrupting and disintermediating. So in this journey, we'd like to share with the panel to explore this. Now, on the panel, we have got Richard Ko from Microsoft. You'd like to introduce yourself a bit?
Yeah, sure. So, hi everyone. My name is Richard Ko. I'm the CTO of Microsoft Singapore. And first of all, thank you very much to InnoFest and Lionel for moderating this panel. So, a little bit about myself. I started my Microsoft career actually in Redmond. If you know the product Office 365, I was part of the team that built that 12 years ago. So, been in this space for quite a while, and having seen it growth for the last 12 years is just really amazing. So hopefully this will be a good time to share with the audience here some of the experiences, tips and tricks when you're thinking about the journey to the cloud, or actually even leverage it to do something even more interesting. Thank you.
Paul?
Yeah, so thanks. So my name's Paul Scanlan. I'm the Cto of Huawei. It must be unusual to find a non-Chinese sitting up here at the pointy end of the stick, right? And so I won't go into all the detail, but what do I do as the CTO? So first of all, T I don't normally think of as technology. You know, technology is one component, and we can talk about that forever. But T is really about transformation. So my target, my job, is very specific, yes, and it's an interesting one. How to make 50 billion more. So today we make probably about 100 billion we'll do this year. So where's the next 50 billion? 50 billion is not sales. 50 billion is about creating new market. And the only way you can do that is by doing things in a different way, and that's with different people and different partners. So we need about 200 to 300 billion of new business opportunities if the industry would like Huawei to have its share. So that means we need to do things very differently, and I think the reason why we come here every year at InnovFest and why we're trying to now link, as you've suggested this morning or this evening, is how do we take the SMEs and put them in the cloud? I think that's my target, and that's consistent with the panel's discussion.
Aliza?
Hi, I'm Aliza Knox. I'm the head of Cloudflare for APAC. I guess I'm the only one on the panel either brave enough or foolish enough to come with, branding. But it's partly because I think one of the reasons we're on the panel is that we're not a huge company yet either. We have about 600 people globally, and we're in the same process as many SMEs of scaling up, leveraging things that weren't possible before to be able to grow. So Cloudflare speeds up and protects anything connected to the internet, whether it's APIs or IoT, and we sort of democratize that in a way that I would say maybe Google democratized advertising. You didn't have to be a large MNC to get on to use AdWords. And similarly, Cloudflare, in providing security and speed in particular, we also have, and that's not just for websites, it's for mobile apps, et cetera. We provide it free and then on some very low, sort of low amount plans all the way up to enterprise. And so one of our goals is really to build a better internet and to make it possible for some of the smaller players to be able to grow quickly to work with the other services on this panel.
Right. My name is Abhinav. I head the strategy and global business development for Deskera. I think we are one of the largest cloud and SaaS business services provider in the region. We have more than 100,000 users in this region, more than 20,000 enterprises or SMEs use our services. We are at the forefront of cloud and SaaS innovation, where we are providing services which is being used by corporations day in and day out in this region, the whole Southeast Asia region. And I think when you talk about intelligent cloud and everything, one of the messages which we think that the businesses think in business outcome basis. They don't think in terms of cloud or speed or something. They want business outcomes, and we provide business outcomes using technologies.
Okay, thank you. And I'm Lionel Lim. I run Pivotal for Asia Pacific and Japan. We would probably be a dream for a lot of startups, because we were a startup in 2013, and we just went IPO in New York Stock Exchange at the end of April this year. We provide software platform to enable companies to write software and deploy software across the globe easily. So what I'd like to do is to explore the theme in 3 ways. One is to look at the journey that companies are taking to get onto the cloud, whether you are a small, medium enterprise or a startup, and also if you are a large enterprises, what do you do in the digital transformation to get onto the cloud? And the other piece would be then looking at software, how the role of software is becoming important, whether you're a startup or whether you're a large enterprise, that it is ultimately the key assets that you touch customers with, and how do you build it and how do you protect it? And then finally, is how do you secure your data? So let's start by our first question. So we have, over here, Paul, you have worked with a lot of SMBs from Huawei. Microsoft, you've done a lot of that. Abhinav, you're from SMB before, or a startup before. So perhaps you could share with us some of your customer journeys, whether they're startups or so forth. And out of that, maybe some tips to the team.
Okay, shall I go first? Okay, so I think when you think about the journey to the cloud itself, and earlier this year we did a study together with IDC, and as we look at the study across the whole entire Asia Pacific, and then even here specifically for Singapore, we see that increasingly a lot of the products and services is going to come from digital technologies. And we are estimating that a good 60% of that is going to happen for the Singapore GDP by 2021. Now, so what that means is that a lot of companies, whether they are small or they are big or they are somewhere in the middle, there is already a very conscious effort to think about digital transformation within the company itself, but also in their products and services, in their operations, how they engage with their customers, and also how are they empowering their employees with the right digital tools to be able to be productive and just like bring about new changes within the company itself and also externally to their customers and partners. So I think before they think about just a journey to the cloud as in a technology journey itself, really what they are doing is, what's the business landscape going to look like? And we at Microsoft fundamentally believe that every business is and will be a software and digital business. And without that mindset, it's going to be very hard to survive into the new century, right? Because this is what your customer expect. So I think when they start to think about those kind of 4 areas that I mentioned about transforming their products and services, empowering their employees, optimizing their operations, or engaging their customers, I think those are the first few steps that they take. And then how do they weave digital technologies into that fabric itself to be able to transform their business? I think those are the kind of the observations that we've seen in the engagements that I have with our customers, whether they're big or small. Some of them are literally a 3-man startup. Those are the same conversations. So the cloud has afforded that kind of capabilities, whether they are a large MNC or a 3-man or 2-man startup.
Yeah, to the small, medium enterprises and startups, it's actually very dramatic because the cost of entry is significantly lower. I think, in the last 3 decades, it's ever been the lowest it's been. And it's, so I think that's very, very exciting out there. How about you, Paul?
Where would you like to start? Maybe I'll tell you a little bit about Huawei. Would you like to know how Huawei started? We started 30 years ago. Last November was our 30th anniversary, yes? So we started off with about $5,000 capital. We started as a small company, yes? And the focus was to take somebody else's product, but to provide very focused customer experience. So we focused on customer to deliver that. Phase 2, we don't have access to that product. So what do? We start inventing products. So we learned very quickly the first part to focus on in any company, whether you're small, medium, or large, is customer. So you must have the customer experience. That's paramount, yes? The second component was IPR. If you don't have your own product, you don't own the patent. What do you really have, okay, for example? Then where do you market? You can't take your niche global against a lot of the other big boys or against somebody else who has perhaps better capability than you. So you have to find the niche market in which you operate. So there are a couple of stepping stones that Huawei learnt 30 years ago. And from $5,000 to $100 billion, quite a remarkable achievement. And we're not a public company at all. We are a private company. We're not aligned to any government, so the shareholders are owned and the people who work for the company. My observation in dealing with any companies around the world, and I've been doing it for about 30 years, is the 2 challenges are capitalization. So if you don't have enough funding and you don't have good management, 95% of small businesses will go out of business. And if you don't have uniqueness of product or differentiation, then it's going to be very hard for you to survive in any case. So of the roughly 300 or so entrepreneurial companies that are out here, and I went round with my colleague to maybe 150 of them, I just ask a simple question: what's your target? What's your dream? Where do you want to go? Where do you want to be today, and where do you plan to go to? It's important to have a dream. Right? No dream, you don't go anywhere. And then how do you get there? Who are your partners? Who are your products? What's your strategy to go from here to here? And that's something, if we were now to look at what advantage do you have today and over the last 3 years, that all the SMEs did not have for the last 30 years, and that is cloud, and that is analytics. So the opportunity that you have today is this thing called cloud, whether it's a fabric or a facility, you can think of them the same way. It's a marketplace, and that's what this is outside here. It's a marketplace of opportunity to put your small company and to take all the components that before you had to go and buy or beg or borrow, because they're all there on a pay-as-you-use basis, pretty much, from your billing system to your Salesforce.coms, for example. So I think that's a huge opportunity that didn't exist when companies like Huawei and any other smaller companies, including Microsoft, 30, 40 years ago. So I think, my advice to the people are, have the target, understand very clearly, work with some of the bigger companies to understand how we can pull you through. Because we can't make 50 billion more, you can't make 50 billion more, unless we understand how you guys are going to contribute with your young and new ideas to a couple of 100 billion. We can provide platforms. We can provide open labs for you to test and come collaboratively, whether a Microsoft Cloud or a Huawei Cloud or others. So that's my 2 cents worth.
anything that you'd like to add, Aliza?
I think we are very SME focused in the region, and I can tell you some things which we have observed in our 150,000 users which we have in the region. I think the SMEs, I mean, it's a well-known fact that they employ 90% of people. They contribute a significant portion of GDP. They are the focus of all of the national policies around the region. But these guys have been under a tremendous pressure in the last 5 to 6 years, and I think the pressure, some of this has driven by the technological disruption which has come into play, where their traditional markets has been disrupted by the online players and all. I mean, previously, if you think of an IT hardware vendor, he has a captive market, but right now, anybody can go and consume a Microsoft service on your platform or even on a Amazon or Lazada or whatever it is. So this guy's business is being disrupted, and this has happened for food delivery. This has happened for, I was captive to my restaurant, which was near to my street, and now I can consume a dish which is halfway across the city by Grab food or whatever it is. So their markets are disrupted right now. So they have an impact at the top line level, as well as with the increasing manpower cost and increasing scrutiny with all these taxes and changing. I mean, we are all aware Malaysia taxes changes and things like that. They have an operational challenge as well. So if you think financially, or you think their businesses as having a lot of headwinds, but these are the people who employ 90% of our workforce, produce 30% of our GDP, right? And the big guys are coming. I basically think they have to get into this cloud or technology to get this competition field level. We have to help them increase their sales from, let's say, providing them a CRM or a marketing tool which can be consumed in the SaaS. And then we have to give them a productivity tool which can help them reduce the manpower cost. So we are defraying some of these forces which is coming through, and then, and with all due respect, they can compete with a Huawei or a Microsoft in providing those services and reclaim. They can't reclaim the customers which they have lost, but they can open new markets which was previously untenable to them and provide services as a cost, because the technology helps them to reduce cost at a better price point what they were providing previously. So in my perspective, the technology, and this story has played out again and again, industry after industry, as tech has come across as variant industry. I think cloud, an intelligent cloud, levels the playing field for a lot of players. It starts competing on services and everything in that sense.
Yep.
So I think the thing I would add, and it's been said in several ways, but if Paul's saying you need to know what differentiates you, and I think one of the things that SMEs can do now that they couldn't do before is almost, it's not really outsourcing, but paying in a different way for the things that you don't need to focus on. So it used to be you had to build a whole lot of things, build your own software, build support that nobody else was going to give you. And of course, if you look, for example, at a retailer, no other retailer in the world can spend the amount that either Amazon or Alibaba can spend right now to provide systems, whether it's marketing systems or e-commerce platforms like Magento or anything else. But you can find lots of players who have also grown up in the cloud now, or close to when the cloud was around, who will scale for you. So obviously for us, that means I think we have we've crossed higher numbers than this, but our official statistics are well over 7 million domains on Cloudflare, and it's a bit like Deskera. We're making it possible, and these guys as well, who also have big clients, but we've got, I suppose, predominantly smaller and mid-sized companies who are saying, okay, I could never afford to build that myself, but now I can go and find somebody else who's built it. And if you look, you'll see a lot of sharing or co-customership between SaaS companies. So, for example, we use Twilio and Zendesk, and they both use us and they use each other, because these are all companies that have had to grow up at a time when they thought, okay, I've got one thing I can do well, but the rest of it I can never afford now to maybe invest what Microsoft or Huawei have had the chance to do over time. So how do I go and leverage something somebody else has done? And exactly as Paul said, and Richard, because you can pay as you go now, because there are offerings that allow you to access the infrastructure, but without having had to pay to build it. I think SMEs are actually, it's still tough, but in a better position than they've been in a long time. And you can see 2 big players here and 2 smaller players here who've grown up that way and also offer these products to SMEs, which is a different world than it might have been 10, 15 years ago.
Yep, very interesting. So one of the things that I see out there is if you're an SMB or a startup, you look for tools, software platform to be able to write your software on, and you know that that's a very key differentiator. One of the biggest worry is a vendor lock-in, that at some point as they scale up, they hit a huge brick wall. So coming from providers like Huawei and Microsoft, how do you assure, give the comfort to the SMB and the startup space as to prevention of vendor lock-in into your stack?
I know, great question. And I think when you think about that particular topic itself, this is kind of dear to Microsoft's heart, right? We are all into open source, and I'm sure there's a lot of folks in the audience here that's like, wow, that's not like Microsoft, several years ago.
Yeah, Microsoft has changed a lot.
Yes, and just on Monday, you saw us signal our intention to buy GitHub, the largest open source community and all that. And I think when SMB thinks about solutions out there, there are a lot of choices out there in the marketplace. Open source is certainly one of those areas that can potentially help to defray some of the costs and things like that as they think about their solutions to undertake their digital transformation. And it all harks back to Microsoft's mission. We exist to empower every person and every organization on the planet to achieve more. And really what that's about is really building the tools and the platforms that supports businesses of all sizes to digitally transform. But it's not about locking in them or anything like that, but it's really about empowering all of them to build more interesting technology and solutions that they can bring to market itself. And that's just right through to the DNA of the company itself. So when you think about vendor lock-in, you really have to judge the company on some of its recent actions and judge them what they're going to do in the future. And that's the commitment that we have made, and we are transformed as a company to really go to where our businesses, our customers, our partners, big or small, where they're going, and embrace that and make sure that we are really thinking hard about building the best tools and technology to support them and make them rock stars in their own particular way in their own industries.
Good answer. Abhinav, your crown jewel is the business the business management software. How do you ensure that you don't get a lock-in and that you can run on multiple clouds?
I think it's a very interesting question. I think you have to think, no business owner in my business ever woke up and said, oh, I want to buy an ERP today, or I want an intelligent office application. None of them wakes up by thinking that, oh, I want to consume software today. They wake up with business problems. I have a sales force which I cannot compensate properly. I don't know my service engineer went. Did he reach the customer, or did he went to some place and just came back? My financial accounts are not being filed. Am I tax compliant? He wakes up with a business problem. He doesn't wake up with a question that, I want to consume software today. That's the biggest thing which we experience, right? These business outcomes or business problem is what you have to provide solution with. And that is where our biggest entry point is, where my sales force doesn't go in and says, oh, we have the world's beating CRM system. We listen to his problem and say, listen, this is the way you can solve it. And you talked about lock-in, and I'll come there, but that's the fundamental change which these guys want. There is a dollar value to his problem. He won't spend $1 million to compensate his sales force, but if you price it right, he will consume it. And he won't change software by vendor lock-in. Till you don't give him problem anymore, he will never go away if you allow him to run his business properly. He doesn't want disruption. Yes, one day if his sales force grows to 50,000 people and your software can't scale, he will say, boss, it doesn't work, right? So that's the key mindset change we have figured out. Our software is totally aligned for business outcomes. We never say, oh, we have the best ERP with an AI, marketplace, blockchain, blah, blah. I mean, I'm sorry about that. We are we have a very strong technology. We tell you that you your business on us. I make sure you're 100% compliant. It works at a press of a button, and you can access it anywhere. And we will make sure you're always compliant if you're a GST or a taxation way. If you do that, then the conversation of lock-in never comes. Because he's looking at a solution. He's looking to help somebody take his pains away, give him a cost advantage, and a system which he doesn't have to spend 50,000 every time a government rule changes or something like that. That's it.
Actually, the question is really more targeted at that. How do you prevent a vendor lock-in for your own solution, not to your solution, so that you do not get locked into a primary cloud provider that you operate on?
So we have SME users, and some of them are not very tech savvy. I'll be very, very honest with you. So we provide download of data and upload of data using Excel in almost all screens. So if tomorrow V doesn't work, he can download the data in an Excel or a CSV, and it is importable in most systems. But as I said, as long as his business runs, he will never walk away from you. That's our experience. The only way is if his business is really dying, if he can't pay anymore, that time we kind of, that's an obvious thing. Or if your system can't scale up to the level, I hope if you become a Huawei or a Microsoft, of course, my system might have some struggles out there, but I think we can still work with you. But, till then, we don't have a problem. So I think the vendor lock-in thought process, most of these guys don't even have an IT team. They don't have an RFP or an RFQ. This guy will wake up and say, oh, I need this. He will call up his friend or his competition or his friend and say, what do you use? Deskera. OK, what do you do? I press a button, bro, and it works. OK, let me connect to him.
So I'm not sure on the multi-vendor question exactly what you're asking, Lionel, but I think one other thing to think about it is multi-cloud and being prevented. I think some people are worried about just choosing, only Microsoft or only Amazon or whatever, just because it's like anything else. Am I tied to it? And I suspect that's less for SMEs and more for larger companies, but I do know that, where we work, where if I take your approach to it, Abhinav, which is really what's the solution, one of the things we really provide, as do others, is, speed, right? Because websites are getting heavier, but speed's really important. And I think Amazon's put out that like 100 milliseconds in latency gives you 1% drop in revenue. So everybody wants to be fast. So some of the little companies, it really matters. Cryptocurrency, a lot of money transferring through, but still small companies. Mobile gaming, things like that. I know it's important to Grab, who's got a whole booth over here. We've talked to them. Like, it's great in Singapore. I took a Grab over here. It's fine. The driver showed me he came fast. But in Indonesia, Grab, Gojek, sometimes you're waiting. And then the driver's waiting. Am I supposed to go there or not? And since I thought it was Microsoft, and I'm not sure, that said, figured out we have attention span that's like less than a goldfish now at 8 seconds. Again, you lose customers. So I think that even for some small players, to prevent being locked in, they'll use multiple vendors just to make sure, or they'll go between them if they see different speeds. And so people sell, a single pane so that you get a dashboard across. And it does get a little complex, but I think it is far more possible now for people who are particularly worried about locked in to actually do something about it. And all of these providers here make it possible. My guess is that Deskera, I can use some of their solutions and some of somebody else's. I know I can use part of Microsoft, or like we partner with Azure, so somebody can use part of you and part of us. So I think at this point in the world, we're all used to that and willing to make it possible. So even I think SMEs do have to make trade-off about like how much time do I want to spend on this and deal with complexity. Maybe I wait till I get to a certain size. But I feel like the tools are out there that are available that prevent them from having to be locked in, even at a small size, on things that they care about.
I agree. Switching gear, I think I do want to leave some time for the audience questions. So one question on security. How would you recommend companies think about the security right at the beginning?
I'm teasing. Let the other guys answer first. I'm just being silly. It's like 5 o'clock and people are tired in here, so I don't have to answer first. I said I don't have to answer first.
Oh,
somebody else.
Okay. Do any of you?
Okay, so let me take an example of how we might approach security, and I'll sort of answer the vendor security together. I'll answer them together and holistically, perhaps, yes. So I agree with you that I think, Abhinav, the SMEs don't really think about a vendor lock-in at all, okay? so Huawei embarked on its journey of cloud about 10 years ago. And the way we did it is we set up a new R&D facility in Shanghai, and I call it the building with no moving parts. There is no moving parts because there's no fans or anything, because there's no computers. So we did that about 8 or 10 years ago. And what we did was we hosted everything in a cloud. Now, there's no standard in cloud, lots of open systems, so there's a couple of challenges when you come right now down to security and privacy.
Yeah.
But what we learnt from the cloud was we learnt how to consume it ourselves. So we understood immediately security, problem fixed, because it's centralized. The second thing we learnt was about IT. We learnt about how the operation and maintenance and the costs relating to everything in IT could be changed before we talked about productivity and other components. The next step was, if we're going to be serious about trying to promote cloud, whether it's different components of cloud, then we need interoperability capabilities. So we built now, and it's the world's largest interoperability facility in China, and we have everybody from Microsoft and EMC and Dell and HP and IBM, everybody is there, and we've got demonstrable capabilities of managing anybody's cloud or infrastructure and anybody else managing anybody else's. Now, I think this is terribly important because this now brings together the competitors at all layers, whether it's infrastructure or the software layers or the application layers, to test things in an environment from interoperability where there are no standards. It also gives this community of cloud providers the opportunity to come up with how to provide security solutions or security-based solutions to the general public so that everybody understands that you can be secure, whether you pick Azure or Huawei. And in fact, Huawei and Microsoft are collaborating in certain areas of cloud-based technology. So you can be sure that you can put your product today on ours, and tomorrow if you don't get the service you're expecting, then you can migrate it immediately with no pain, as opposed to in the old days where vendor lock-in meant a lot more complicated types of things. But also in thinking about these components, where does cybersecurity start? Cybersecurity starts with policy and education. So in Huawei, we treat it very, very seriously. So we take cybersecurity from the highest point to the lowest point. Every person in Huawei is aware of what they can and cannot do according to law and legal components. And then we train everybody, and everybody signs. So before we start talking about software protection and hardware protection, which are bricks and mortar things that we put around. So it's a framework, it's a process. And I would also encourage any company who's thinking about the word security not to just start with a firewall, because that's not the answer, okay? The answer starts with educating and understand that people are the leaky sieve. So you need to start with policies and education within a company. And I think that also comes back to close the loop around this vendor lock-in thing. If you understand what's my business is to do that, not to worry about all of this. And that's our job collectively, I think, to make sure that as a platform, we provide a platform for you to do business securely, openly, interoperably.
Right.
So I,
Go ahead.
one of the interesting things about security is that some of the kind of old-fashioned attacks are still the most popular, right? Like DDoS attacks, and they've gotten bigger and bigger, and there's kind of an arms race in bandwidth and compute power. So I think GitHub unfortunately had an attack right earlier this year of 1.3 terabytes, and we were at 15. Is it 15? Now I get them. Yeah, 50 million terabytes, and so you can rely. It's the same thing I've been saying before, but you can rely on the scale of somebody else who's already built this stuff to protect you, and it really does. I don't want to be a fearmonger. This is not like life insurance, but we've seen examples where florists, attack each other. So the problem is it's a lot easier to be a bad guy than a good guy. You can go buy a DDoS stressor for $5, and you can, 2 days before Valentine's Day or before Singles Day, you can get somebody to DDoS stress, your competitor in a small town in China or, down the street in Singapore. It's not just going after GitHub or Dyn or Equifax, and it puts you out of business. So I do think it's something for small companies to really think about, but again, I think there are easy ways to do it. I do think security is important. There are a lot of different things you have to secure against. So Cloudflare, again, does have a free product for this for SMEs, not just because we're altruistic, but because of that, we have all these websites, domains on our network, and we can kind of see the bad guys, and we can score them so that we provide a filter for all sorts of clients, but the small people get the benefit of that too. But there are other kinds of attacks that you have to look out for. But I think the sad thing, I mean, the hardest thing about cybersecurity to me is that before it used to be kind of vicious and nasty and mischievous and showing what you could do as a hacker, but now it's a money game. You know, there's organized crime in it, there's a lot of ransomware attacks, and so it is important even as a small company to be thinking about what are you going to do to protect yourself. But I think the message, again, from everybody up here is there's lots of solutions. They don't need to be wildly expensive, but in this particular case, it's a bit like brushing your teeth. It's much better to be prepared than waiting afterwards and getting the cavity filled. So.
Okay.
Very quickly, I think I can tell you this. I mean, all of the companies here, ours included, we take every possible step to secure the data, from browser to our data centers to keeping the data encrypted and everything. However, it's a matter of education, as you pointed out. If you downloaded the data on your laptop and you left the laptop in a taxi, or if there is a ransomware attack, no technology can help you there, to be very honest, right? I mean, if you download, we have around 100,000 people's payroll data, including their dependents and everything, how much they earn, people's balance sheet. I can do everything in my system to secure it. We can use the best of the solutions. But if somebody downloaded it on a mobile phone on my app, and left it in a taxi without a PIN, or lost the laptop. So I think there is a lot of education which has to go out there. The industry is doing what it can at the systems level, but I think from a business application perspective, I think the message which we give is you need to have a policy, and these guys don't even have IT. I mean, this is basically somebody out there. So we do that, we do our bit. I think everybody here does that bit, but there is a part which is at their end.
And
Okay.
yeah, and I think that's great, because when you think about the cloud providers, we're always trying to make sure that there's a lot of world-class security in all the products and services that we deliver to our customers. I mean, at our company, we invest over $1 billion annually every year just in security research and development and bringing that capabilities into our products. So, you know, Lionel, I'll just kind of answer that question in two fashions, right? There's the, let's say, the SMEs that are just, you know, building their business itself, and IT, like, you know, you said, is not really their core competency itself. They're really looking for products and services that has security and intelligence, all of that built into the products and services that they consume. And this is a very big part in how we think about delivering our products like Office 365 and Azure and Dynamics 365 to our customers of all sizes. We build security from the ground up, from day one. And what it means is that these capabilities are also afforded to the smallest of guys. It doesn't mean that a small company has to compromise on security. That's not the way it works anymore. And when you think about the other side of it, the large enterprises who are building applications for their customers, I think a big part of it is really thinking about building and designing security from the get-go, not from day one. It's not an afterthought itself. What we do at a company to help our customers do that is that we share with them and we open source our security development lifecycle itself. So you can, as a company, if you're a larger enterprise with developers and engineers, look at how we are building our products and services as well. Learn from the best practices at scale and say, okay, how do I engineer security from day one into the products and services? So I think those are the way a lot of the providers here, we all think about it, right? Through the whole span of customer sizes, if you will.
Okay.
Yeah.
So maybe I'll just open up to the audience if you have any questions or anything for the panels. Is there a mic, please?
Hi, my name is Asanka. I want to ask a question about serverless computing. So that's opening up a whole new level of game to any startup or small business coming up into the cloud, and it's going to offer the same performance, scalability, and the security and safeguards of all the leading cloud providers for any startup or application developer. So that will change how the lag that you mentioned happens in Indonesia with Grab or whichever platform that you're going to see, because you're actually relying on the platform. So how does it affect cloud computing into the future, and how will it disrupt the existing platforms and how applications will be built into the future? Thank you.
You're talking about serverless computing?
Yes, exactly.
Okay. Any of you want to talk?
Sure, I can pick that up. So, absolutely. From Microsoft perspective, you've heard of Azure Functions. Azure Functions is our hero service on serverless itself. Now, when you think about cloud computing itself, you're not, you don't want to be always spinning up lots of virtual machines, storages, all of that, and keeping things running, and you just get this sprawl that is unmanageable. Serverless computing it's really exciting because it provides a new way of thinking about how application will be designed in an event-driven world, where events are actually triggering all these cloud services from spinning up. So you're not spinning them, when you start the application itself, but only on demand, really, really on demand, when the actual event is happening itself. So at Microsoft, we believe that there's this ubiquitous computing fabric that's going to cut across the intelligent cloud and the edge itself. And when we think about serverless, these are huge opportunities for us to bring that kind of new paradigm from an event-driven architecture perspective and afford that kind of capabilities to developers of all spectrums of needs, and be able to empower them to build the kind of applications that is amazing. So I think serverless is huge. Containers, management of that, those are huge opportunities. So I think those are stuff to look towards too, and certainly encourage everybody to explore thinking about refactoring some of that application into that space, so that you can think about how do you bring all that application landscape under control as well.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Richard. Thank you, Paul. Thank you, Aliza and Abhinav. It's been delightful to have you all here. And thank you for being here for this panel. I hope it answered some of the questions you have in your mind.
Thank you very much.